Hello and welcome to this episode of the Gene Keys Exploration. My name is Shelly Szigli and I am a Gene Keys guide. I'm excited to be sharing with you an exploration of each of the gene keys, starting from the first gene key, moving our way all the way through to the 64th gene key. Disclaimer, these episodes are really just about sitting with the energy of the gene keys and literally, at times, reading from Richard Rudd's book. The gene keys are so vast and complex, and as a guide, I don't remember much of the information, so we're going to be exploring these gene keys together. You can find my work at www.genekeyrecordkeeper.com. And other than that, I just hope you enjoy the show and enjoy this exploration. Please feel free to share it, leave us a review, and tell us how this exploration was for you. Hello and welcome to the daily exploration of the gene keys. My name is Shelly Szigli. I am your host, your guide, the one that will be talking to you for the duration of this journey. And today we are going to dig into the 10th gene key. Now, the 10th gene key I am not very familiar with, so this is going to be a journey and an exploration for you as well as myself. And like always, I find that as I'm recording these daily explorations of the gene keys, whatever gene key it is incredibly fitting to my situation. And it's my intention that when you listen to this, that it's also fitting to your situation in some way, shape, or form. So as always, I begin these explorations with a disclaimer. I am not a gene keys expert. However, I'm a gene keys guide. So my role within the gene keys is to share them, is to be a fellow passenger. And that's the beauty of the gene key system, is it doesn't create hierarchy. He's worked really hard, and when I say he, I'm talking about Richard Rudd, and you can find out all sorts of things of Richard by just Googling him, Richard Rudd. And you can also go onto the Gene Keys website, www.genekeys.com, to get your own free hologenetic profile if you don't have it yet, and to also have access to everything that is offered through the Gene Keys. So it's a beautiful system, hence why I'm doing this exploration and why myself, as a teacher, as a healer, as somebody who's been in the spiritual world professionally for the last 12 years, I'm really drawn to the gene keys. And why I'm drawn to them is because the vast amount of diverse knowledge, wisdom cannot be missed within this system. And the openness of the teachings, in the sense that there is no true outcome other than the contemplation of our own self and the understanding of our own self, and even the transcendence in some ways of our own self. Because the way the gene keys work is that as we recognize the shadows and explore the shadows within our makeup, that through the exploration of the shadow, we find the gift. And the gift is the beautiful expression. The gift is really, although it's not the highest expression, it is the expression that really shifts and changes our world and changes our reality, how we feel in ourself and our body, and how the world creates outside around us. And from that gift, when we're operating in that gift, then the Siddhic states become available to us. They become something we can taste, touch, smell from time to time. And for some of us, eventually we may end up living in those states at some point in our journey. However, it really, because a lot of teachings that I have found in my own journey. So I've been professionally teaching for 12 years, and serving. But my entire life has been a spiritual journey. And we're talking a young, troubled girl who's incredibly troubled, stealing Louise L. Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, from the bookstore. So I was troubled, but I was still seeking. And this is probably at like 16, 15, somewhere around there, where I'm still seeking. So the seeking part for me has been a part of my journey. And to let you know a little bit about that, I've spent years as a Muslim, a devout Muslim, not just a kind of Muslim. I prayed 5 times a day. I followed the rules per se, and other religious teachings as well. Although I will say Islam got the longest stretch. That 5-year stretch was probably the longest that I could focus in one area. Now, what always brought me back was, and when I say brought me back to seeking, right, was that I found there were limits within everything, and that the limits within the system drove me to say, yeah, this isn't for me. I need to explore more. So when I found the gene keys, and they were pointed out to by a friend of mine at the time, someone I was quite close to, she had heard from them from somebody else, and we began to dig into our own gene keys and explore them. I didn't know at that time just how massive they would become in my life and my professional career. I didn't know that I would be really sharing them in the capacity that I am sharing them. I have some interesting things that I'm building in the background as well. But I don't desire to create a system of gene keys. That isn't my genius at all. It's already been done. So when you hear the term, don't try to reinvent the wheel, that's something that really struck me when I really courted these gene keys, is I don't need to create anything else here. I've created a system of healing. That is my area of expertise, but there's this part of me, this diverse nature, which my life's work is Gene Key 16, which the gift is versatility, and the Siddhi is mastery, that loves to dip, and the Gene Keys gives me that expression. So I hope some of that was helpful for you, and even to understand a little bit about myself and why I'm here on this journey with you. Now we're going to dig into the 10th Gene Key. So the first sentence, and again, I am reading the Gene Keys Embracing Your Higher Self, Your Higher Purpose by Richard Rudd, which you can find on Amazon. And the sentence underneath the title is being at ease. Okay? The shadow is self-obsession. The gift is naturalness. And the Siddhi is being. So, the 10th shadow, self-obsession. This is going to be a really interesting one to dig into. And I'm really excited. Like I said, right? It's my intention that the one that I'm doing is fitting to myself, and that it's fitting to you who are listening when you are listening. So I'm going to just start with the second paragraph in the book. That's where I'm pulled to go. In our modern world, the 10th shadow, which is self-obsession, still governs us on a collective level. Even though it is showing signs of awakening today, the emphasis of the 10th shadow is on the individual, which can be both a blessing and a curse. Individual differentiation is the cornerstone of evolution itself. If we humans do not discover our own identity and uniqueness, we cannot transcend it and move our society to a higher level. The blessing is that the more different we each allow ourselves to be, the more we operate as a unity. And this is one of the best, beautiful of all human paradoxes, that only through our very diversity can we arrive at our unity. But there are forces that tug against evolution, and these forces come from within. They keep us from experiencing our true uniqueness. Okay. Through the lens of the 10th shadow, all you see when you look at others is people you would like to change. Thus, you find it extremely difficult to accept anyone else for their uniqueness. In psychology and psychiatry, such self-obsession is known as narcissism, and in moderation, it is considered to be an essential component of a healthy human psyche. However, at the shadow frequency, such narcissism, like the legend it is derived from, keeps human beings endlessly trapped by their own reflection. Ironically, the more of an expert you become in the subject of the lower self, the further away you travel from your higher self. So this is, when I read this and feel this, projection, right? This is where we are projecting our own feelings of inadequacy, our own feelings and fears of, not being good enough. We feel these aspects, and instead of owning them, right, in the shadows, right, in the Gene Keys systems, all of those lower aspects of the shadows, instead of owning them and going into them and feeling them and embracing them, we project them outwards, and we see it reflect back to us in the people in our world. So we become obsessed with saying, oh, you need to change this, you need to change that, oh, don't you see what you're doing? We become real experts in pointing out what other people are doing and how other people are wrong and how all of the circumstances in our lives are unfair and people just, do these things to us. But oftentimes we're projecting our lower self into the world, and therefore it reflects back to us. So that's really what comes up for me. And people aren't aware of how much we do this, and especially people like you and I and people in the spiritual community. We think because, and I just talked about this in my first class of the 888 Essence Development Mentorship Program that I'm running. I talked about this, is we think because we understand something mentally, that we have a mental connection to something, that we've transcended it, that we aren't operating there. And really what ends up happening is because we have that mental understanding, our ego now speaks to us as if we've transcended it. Our ego's like, you already know this. Don't worry. This isn't you. Don't worry. It's just everybody else, right? So it's really quite fascinating. And I've had to learn this as I've developed in my own spiritual journey. Is like, oh man, like we just get more creative in how we communicate to ourselves. And again, I say it all the time. Most people's intuition is actually their ego posing as intuition. And that's a hard pill to swallow for some people. However, I am so grateful because more people are speaking out about this. So it's not just, little Shelly. And I say little Shelly because I'm 40 years old. So I'm not really that little. I have 8 children. I have a lot of life experience. However, I'm not 70. I'm not 60. I'm not in that stage where people look at me and be like, yes, she's a teacher, right? A lot of the people that I serve are older than me and some are younger than me. And that's something that people have to, get used to, is being able to look at my youthfulness, which I do. I do have a lot of spirit within me. I do look quite young for my age. And understand that there's a real wise being in there, and not wise as in I'm better than, but I have a lot of things figured out, and I've spent a lot of time in a lot of places of contemplation that most people haven't. So that, makes me very valuable. So I'm not sure how I got on there, but I feel that was really useful, and my heart is kind of expanding as I said that. So thank you for that. So back to the book. In the modern Western world, self-obsession is everywhere. People are obsessed with how they feel and how they look, what they wear, what they own, and where they live. As long as you are looking at yourself and you cannot see around you. And there is the rub. Until you come to recognize your own self-obsession, you cannot transcend it, which is why it is a necessary evil. All inner journeys begin with this self-obsession, and it can truly become an endless labyrinth. Even when self-obsession takes the form of a spiritual search, it can become a trap. In fact, in many ways, the spiritual search for truth that is gripping so many individuals in our Western world today is the greatest self-obsession of all. Ding, ding, ding. Richard, you guys, I haven't read this ever. I haven't explored this gene key ever. But that's exactly it. The self-obsession, the ego gets on a trip when it feels like it's on a spiritual journey and it's evolved. Back to reading. The path itself easily becomes an addiction that keeps you from truly being yourself. The more you look for your own true identity, the more ephemeral it becomes. All circular paths do arrive at a breakthrough. Those who tread the path of self-knowledge eventually escape the treadmill once they realize that what they are seeking cannot be found. Right. Ding, 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 ding. This is a spontaneous revelation that can occur only when you have been well and truly lost in the mazy pathways of the self. No one can say how long it will take for such a revelation to dawn. No, and maybe you're having that revelation right now. Since it differs from individual to individual, but it cannot be faked. Ding, ding, ding. Now, this is something I want to talk about quickly as well in the spiritual community, even the helping community, the New Age community, the Earth lovers community, whatever you want to call it. When there's a lot of people faking, there's a lot of people who are really masters of putting on a face of being something that they're not. And perhaps you're faking too. And there's nothing wrong with faking, you guys. It's a place to understand that we're just misaligned and we're kind of missing the boat. But what we know and how we understand if we are one of them or if someone around us is one of them is by looking at their physical body, their physical life, their physical health, their physical... If that is out of alignment, they are on the wrong path. And that's a hard one. A lot of people don't like that. But if we begin to really understand spiritual law and we really understand alignment, if we're fighting to be something that we're not, if we're fighting to be special, be seen in a certain aspect, and we're really convinced that we are this. And this is even where the gene keys can be a trap for some people, because some people read these and take them literal and think, oh my God, this is who I am. I'm going to cultivate myself this way. And that's not right either. And I've heard Richard speak to this before, because each gene key is fluid in its expression, and it isn't actually the way the mind wants to cultivate it. It comes and evolves through exploration. So when you're looking at the world around you and who's speaking into your world and who you're allowing in, remember, anybody can sound good. Anybody can say beautiful, enlightening things, and even can make you feel something. But at the end of the day, you have to look at who's speaking to you and what the results are coming from you. Is your life improving? Is your life opening? Is your life getting better? Or are you kind of, going downwards more? Do you find that you need, a rush from that person in order to feel okay? Because that's not right either. Powerful, this is what I teach when I teach the TYK therapeutic healing method. And in my own work outside of the gene keys is when you are connected to a powerful teacher or healer, and when I say powerful, I'm not talking egoic driven, but somebody who holds a space for powerful change from you, you grow and grow and grow outside of your time together. You're not dependent on connecting with that person. You're not dependent on the high or the temporary relief, right? You maybe converse with this person or you see this person in a session and it's beautiful, it's wonderful, you have a great experience. But what is really beautiful and wonderful is what happens afterwards, in the days following, in the weeks following from being with that individual is you just keep growing and expanding and extending. This is the power of the true healer, in my opinion. And what is a true healer? Somebody who's done the work, who holds the space, who has their ego outside of it, who can just let go and trust in the bigger vision. They're being truly who they are. So back to the shadow here. We're going to talk about the repressive nature. So self-denying. The introverted nature of the shadow of self-obsession is to deny oneself altogether. This kind of reversal of energy of self-obsession becomes entirely centrifugal and focuses on everything and anything but oneself. These are people whose lives are lived for others and through others. Yeah. However, such martyrdom does not have a positive spin and cannot serve evolution. These lives are made up entirely of compromise, in which those who deny themselves become like zombies for the collective. Although this kind of language may sound shocking, a huge majority of the world population lives like this, with no real self-love and no true center or heart within themselves. These people are the prime targets for the world great religions. Their self-denial does not allow them to recognize the divine within themselves, finding it far easier to project such an authority outside of them. So I feel like what he's talking about are the people that need to have something external, right? It's like, give me the rules, tell me what's real, let me look to you and your system. So even myself and my 5 years in Islam, when I talk about that and I share why I went on that journey, I had no self-regulation inside of me. I felt that I needed and required rules. I needed and required structure. I needed and required community, all of these different things. And in some ways I actually did. That's where I look at those 5 years and I know that I grew and I developed and I matured and I blossomed in that, my cat's visiting here, in that framework until I didn't. So when we feel like we have to reach outwards and look outwards, right? It is actually the result of not looking at the shadows within. And it's interesting because as I'm saying this, I'm reflecting back in the past, and I actually had a dream last night, early morning, that really shook me because it was connected to the past. It was connected to people I went to high school with. And it was almost like the dream shook me because I'm like, why is it showing me that? Because that seems like, going backwards. And all morning I've been contemplating that dream and what that dream means. And for me, it really, where I feel and what I feel is that it was showing me something really deep in my subconscious and my psyche, maybe even in my cellular memory, that was ready to be relieved, ready to be let go. And as we're talking about this shadow, the repressive state, right, where I felt that I needed something outside, that is in correlation to the dream that I had. I wasn't on time. I was flying somewhere and I wasn't organized and I almost missed the flight. Like all of these things, right? And yeah, it's just interesting how that all fits. And as I'm going through this gene key, I'm understanding more and more of what that dream was about. So the reactive nature is narcissistic. When the self-obsessive force is externalized through the reactive nature, it becomes truly narcissistic in the sense that it excludes all others. Just as the repressive nature denies its own existence, the reactive denies the existence of others. And into society in general. These people whose lives are based entirely around themselves, the fear within them lives as anger. They project their fear of losing their identity onto others and onto society in general. Such people cannot yield any part of themselves to others. They live in paranoia that the world or others will somehow rob them of their right to freedom. The reactive nature finds relationships the hardest of all, since they are essentially locked in a love affair with themselves. But not with their true self. The true self is everywhere and in everything, since its nature is love. However, to realize such a concept, one has to drop the very thing that gives one the illusion of safety, the illusion of individual identity. Right. So this is interesting, right? So the narcissism is, I look after me and only me. And I'm not really concerned about what happens to you or what happens to anyone else, because I'm going to look after me. And that may appear like self-love, but like Richard's saying in this reading, it is completely the opposite. It is like destroying oneself, and it's building up walls beyond what we can really imagine. These walls are terribly... Here, kitty cat, get out. No. Out. So, these walls are massive. And yeah, it's so interesting because both shadows, excuse me, my cat keeps trying to come in here. Both shadows are massive. And the narcissistic view, narcissism is so interesting right now because we see it everywhere. And everybody's talking about it, and everybody's, categorizing, oh, my ex was a narcissist, this was a narcissist. The thing is, this shadow exists inside everybody. And usually, if you are with a narcissist, right, then you're on the repressive nature. So you're both operating heavily in your shadows, and you just get this loop. Because two narcissists together won't last very long, and two repressive, in the repressive state, self-denying, won't last. They'll destroy each other. They'll destroy themselves with each other. So that doesn't last either. So we tend to look to the parallel. And this is the powerful thing about learning and diving into the shadows. People think narcissist and they're like, oh God, that's not me. That's not me. Well, yeah, it is you. Or if it's not you, it's someone else and you're the opposite. It's okay to identify the narcissism in our world and not think that it's this bad, evil thing that we need to deny, but rather say, hey, like, I thought I was protecting myself all this time. And actually, I was just building walls, brick walls around my energy, around my body, around everything. And yeah, it's going to take some work to move those bricks out. It's going to take some exploration to move those bricks out. Anyways, so the 10th gift is naturalness, living your own myth. The gift of naturalness is a gift that waits within every single human being. It is the center of your being, and only through the center can you express your own creative uniqueness. The life of every individual human being is a journey through the frequencies of this 10th gene key. To be natural means to be yourself. We are all trying to be who we are, but many of us have been conditioned to be other than who we are. It has been this way throughout history. Ever since we began to develop the complex neocortex, the moment the mind was equipped to reflect on itself, the primal question, who am I, was born. Prior to this question, human beings did live in the state of naturalness, but only in the sense that they were more a part of the animal kingdom and had not yet fully developed into Homo sapiens. Even so, it is still interesting how much we can learn about the 10th gift through the animal kingdom, whose normal state is naturalness. I'm going to keep reading here. The human journey, of course, is unique and is obviously different from the path of the animals. We have to solve the conundrum of having a mind that can look at itself. The primal question, who am I, has to be answered before the gift of naturalness can once again be realized. There are so many paradoxes in this 10th gift, the main one being that you cannot be who you are as long as you think you are someone, but you still have to set off the search for someone in order to realize that they do not exist. There is much tension inherent in this simple little question, who am I? And it is realizing of this tension around your identity that is the essence of the 10th gift. The 10th gift of naturalness can dawn only when self-obsession exhausts itself. And the first great revelation that comes from the journey into your unique nature is that you cannot be defined by any kind of label. Once you understand that you are neither your name, nor your actions, feelings, thoughts, or beliefs, you realize that human nature is something far greater and wider than you ever expected. When I go to naturalness, so it's so interesting because he's referring to the animal kingdom, right? To the deer, to the eagles, to the bees, all of the animal kingdom is really interested in being, really interested in, and I guess we could go even into survival, right? So being, there is an aspect of being that is survival. There's the, searching for food, the hiding from predators, the basking in the sunlight when it's there, hiding from the weather. They're just in response to the natural rhythm of life. And for us as human beings, we've been conditioned from day one by our parents telling us what we are, dressing us in, if you're a girl, pretty little dresses, telling you about being a good girl. They're like priming you to be something in the world where your natural drive to just be is dislocated. And again, like he says at the beginning of this one, this is for every single human being. And all of these shadows and all of these gifts and all of these gene keys are relevant for each of us. So they don't have to be in your chart to be relevant. There's a natural rhythm for, and these are my words, this is what's coming out of me. There's a natural rhythm for you to tap into. So when we're talking about this naturalness of finding out who you really are, it's not about developing a curated style. It's not about deciding you're this and then completely jumping in and following it. It's about being in the moment and watching and being curious about where you're led, where you're drawn to, and catching the egoic mind that wants to tell you you are something, or that this is for you, or that is for them, or like these boxes. It's just letting yourself be pulled where you're pulled. And it doesn't matter if where you're pulled doesn't fit with other aspects of what you've been told fits, right? And if you look at an animal, look, I'm looking outside right now and I can see animals, I can see the cows, and they're just walking and they decide to go this way. And then they decide to turn around. And then they decide to walk towards the water. And then they decide to go, over to the gym. They're just following this flow. And this is the gift for you, is find your flow. Get out of your mind and just find your flow. And in that flow, you will begin to find ease. And we don't know ease in our world. So if somebody has this placement dominant in their chart, it's likely there's a lot of unease in their world, in their body, in their energy, in their field, unless they really authentically find this rhythm, authentically figure out how to be. Right? This isn't something that can be curated. And that's what he's saying. He's like, it's not like, that's the paradox. It's like figuring out who I am, but then realizing I'm nothing. So, oh boy, something to contemplate for sure. The second phase of becoming natural tends to be a deep inner questioning and questing in which you isolate yourself in some sense from your previous responsibilities and give time and space to understanding your own nature more. For most people, this phase lasts a long time, and it is also the phase during which most people become stuck in their lower frequency of self-obsession, falling in love with the endless quest for self-knowledge. At a certain point, however, this phase gives way to a natural collapse and a subsequent letting go of all searching as you realize the futility of trying to find something that is clearly indefinable. This realization marks a huge transition point in your life and represents the release from your self-obsession. It can also be a very challenging time as you let go of all constructs and techniques that which you have previously identified, from which you derive security. Fortunately, this third phase swiftly becomes consolidated and integrated into your being, and you enter a new dimension in which you become more and more deeply relaxed. This fourth phase is something like a rebirth as you externalize what is truly inside of you for the first time in your life. It is the time of deep joyousness and purpose, and it is only as you find this sense of relaxedness that you begin once again to feel truly natural. So this is where your nervous system has integrated. This is where, like, your physical body, if you've hit this stage, if you've hit that third stage, right? Even that second stage, your physical body is so in tune. It is so tapped in. It is so balanced because you are not stressed. You are mastering the sense of being. And a lot of people that come into my circle, into my work, even the high-end one-on-one coaching, they're at this point where they're just inches away from living in this balanced, natural state where the nervous system is chill, where they're in full trust, full ease, full naturalness, and they realize that they are attracting and creating their world through this frequency. So the fifth and final phase of this process of becoming yourself manifests as the flowering of your individualized, differentiated self. This is when you hit the peak of your own mythology and bring something entirely new into the world on the high principle that has always lain latent within you. This final flowering of your inner being manifests as a challenge to the current norm. Since your true nature is always found at the cutting edge of evolution, the idea, whatever it may be, represents the true beauty within the individual finding expression in the world. Ding, ding, ding. This is exactly the point where I work with my one-on-one clients, where you have done so much work and you've even found success, but you are ready to flower into this last stage. You are ready to flower into the true essence of who and what you are. You are ready to bring to life, to create a platform, to share your teachings that may be completely out of the box of what you've done in the past. But because you're at this higher level, this higher stage of awareness, of self-awareness, of knowledge, that you're ready to put out the true frequency of your natural being, of who and what you are, and attract to you. And this is where the women that I serve, when they tap into this and they become this, they put out the craziest offers that are like wild. You don't see them out there. They're new because they're authentic to that person's soul. And people are attracted like a magnet. They come in instantaneously. This is the power of this gift when it is embodied and when somebody is really on track with what they're here to do. So, the Siddhic state is divine laziness. And yes, Richard talks about this one. This isn't, divine laziness, which is very different than suppressed or repressed, procrastination. When the differentiated self has manifested in its highest expression in the world through the 10th gift, one final surprise lies in stores. There is a sixth phase to this process of becoming yourself that brings an end to the whole notion of self-knowledge. In a sense, it is the return of the stage before you ask the fateful question, who am I? This sixth phase is the 10th Siddhi of being. When the 10th Siddhi dawns in a human being, then for that person, even evolution itself has ended. In the 10th Siddhi, the differentiated self spontaneously dissolves in a higher mirror of the third phase, in which the constructs of your search for self-knowledge end. However, at the Siddhic level, everything dissolves. Self, not self, mind, form, purpose, and meaning. The only word that gives a hint of what the 10th Siddhi holds is the word being. In the expressions of the mystical traditions, this is sometimes known as the I am consciousness. Although the very use of I can be misleading, in the 10th Siddhi there is no sense of I. There's only pure consciousness expressed as being. Beautiful. Let's just turn the page here. Right, there's not a lot of humans living in this Siddhic state. I'm going to go into this. The way of being is represented strongly by the tradition of Advaita Vedanta. Yes, I was going to say before I started reading this that the gurus, right, in the Hindu Vedic tradition, this Siddhic state is something that they work to and attain. Through the 10th Siddhi, a great lightness is born, and a great humor concerning life itself. To experience life through the 10th Siddhi is to see everything that normal humans think of as important reduced to a game or illusion. To the Arhat, life is meaningless, time is an illusion, and therefore evolution itself is a game. Because this viewpoint is generally viewed by the unenlightened as selfish and threatening to their ongoing identification and illusion, the Arhat, I'm probably saying that wrong, but has been mostly eschewed in favor of the Buddhavista. Thus flow the politics of enlightenment. Oh yes. To those outside these states, they appear utterly contrary to one another. But to the being manifesting them, both poles are experienced together. The only differentiation becomes between them is the language that the person uses to describe his or her experience or revelation. The Arhat has nothing left to do in the world, whereas the Buddhavista has a deeply focused mission to help others. So that's right. So the one is they're detached. They're not the Arhat, A-R-H-A-T, from participating in the human experience, the human game. And the Buddhavista is here to have that higher awareness and bring it down and operate in the world, to share the wisdom, to, hold space, to be present in the world. And like he said, this is the great debate in the Enlightenment world, is like, what are we truly seeking here? Is this it or is this it? And both tend to look at one another and say, haha, they're missing the point, right? And this is where I giggle, because the whole game of enlightenment it is most definitely a game. They're not right. They're not right. It's not even about that. They're choosing two different paths. And again, even the enlightened people project, because, projecting that one is missing the boat and on each other is, a lower mind game, but they're enlightened. You get what I mean? It's interesting. Anyways, to the one within the 10th Siddhi, there has never been anything to do because there is no one to do it. So why all the fuss about our future? Being in the nature of consciousness and form, and it has no agenda or direction. It simply is. In that simple statement lies a power beyond all comprehension, and it establishes the 10th Siddhi as the sleeping giant within the human genome. Nothing has more power than being itself. We would each do well to remember the nature of being that rests behind all the dramas of the world and our individual lives. To rest unattached in the supreme state of being, whilst at the same time participating in the adventure of our evolution, is quite possibly the greatest task that the humans of the future will have to master. Dun, dun, dun. We are done. Thank you, Richard, for the beautiful explanation of the 10th gene key. Oh, and there we go. Look at that. There's a notification right as we are ending and we are completing. So, excuse me. That was beautiful. And a gene key that I feel is very relevant in my world right now and in my life, especially for the last probably 2 years. And one that hopefully is calling you as well. remember that we don't have to have these gene keys in our profile to be impactful and to be of importance. The I Ching, there's 64 different aspects of the I Ching. All of them are circular and are a part of the human genome. So they're all a part of you. I'm wishing you the most beautiful day and the most beautiful evening wherever you are, whenever you're listening to this, and much love to you all, and stay tuned for the next gene key, or go back and dig into the ones prior. Do as you will, and have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day or evening. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of the Gene Keys Exploration. If you would like to purchase the Gene Key Record Keeper, please go to www.genekeyrecordkeeper.com, or you can go to Amazon and search Gene Key Record Keeper, and you can purchase your very own copy of a sacred companion tool as you learn, track, and move through your gene keys. Have the most beautiful day, and we'll look forward to connecting with you in the next episode. Bye-bye.